I don't know when I did not have a crush on Doris Day. And then all of a sudden I found myself doing her show in, I think it was either, I think it was the late 60s. I believe it was the late 60s. Yes, it was. And I came on the show, this was during my Latino phase, as a Puerto Rican hijacker. And I hijacked the plane that she was on. And I brought her to an unnamed country that was probably Puerto Rico. And I had her as a captive there, and I had a great deal of fun. And on the basis of that show, I think I was asked a few months later, would you like to play Louis Palucci? Louis Palucci, they kept changing the format of the Doris Day Show. Louis Palucci, at this time, owned the building that Doris Day had an apartment in. He and Kay Ballard had a restaurant downstairs. Doris lived upstairs with her little family, and Denver Pyle was her dad on the show, and he also directed, and he was a real sweetie pie, and he made things very easy. And working with Kay Ballard was always tremendous fun. We had giggles in her apartment and also in the restaurant, and our adventures. And I think my favorite one that I did with Clara Bixby, Billy DeWolf would call her Clara Bixby, was when I was her old uncle, von Kappelhoff, which was her real name. I forget my first name on there, but I played it with my mustache and with my accent, and I was an art forger, but a lovable art forger. And talking about Billy DeWolf, Billy was such, he was funny, he was delightful. Billy and I would take walks sometimes during our lunch period. And at that time, Gunsmoke was being shot at CBS Studio Center, and also the Wild Wild West. And Billy and I would walk through, and we would walk on the Western sets, and Billy would say, I can't understand why they never use me in Westerns. Of course, we knew why, because he wasn't a Western type. But it was tremendous fun. I can't think of anyone, as I said before, who didn't have a crush on Dodo, on Clara Bixby, on Doris Day, this amazing human being who was in television, that we knew from motion pictures and songs, Que Sera, Sera, and countless huge hits. And I always felt elevated being around her, and just thrilled and delighted. I said, I'm a part of this Doris Day Show, and I loved it. I loved it. It was sweet, and I particularly look forward to the days that we would have our lunches together that she would prepare or have prepared on the set. And I got to tell you, there's people. She always had 18 million dogs on the set. And some of the actors who weren't familiar with her generosity would be intimidated to sit in the chairs that had their own name on the back. You know, these actor chairs that say whoever you are. Because the dogs would be sitting in their chairs and they were afraid to get the dogs off. And I said, no, it's not a problem. Just shush the dogs off and the dogs can sit over there. So, is that all right? They said, what's your name on the chair? It's okay. Not a problem. It was always fun. It was always a party feeling on the set with Denver Pyle, with the great stars that we'd had. We had Tony Bennett was guesting one time, and he had his pianist with him, and it always seemed like a treat. It always seemed like a party at CBS Studio Center. Of course, CBS Studio Center was also the place where we did Get Smart a few years before that. Some of the Get Smarts were done at the same time, and I was very busy then. I was doing the Marlo Thomas show as well, at a different studio. But from the mid '60s to 1970, I was spinning and spinning and spinning from one set to another. I got very friendly with the second ADs, the guys who made up the schedule. I said, okay, I'm working Get Smart on Tuesday and Thursday, so I'm free Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, if you can fit me in. And they fit me in very nicely, and I never really had a conflict, which was surprising. Doris is always a disciplined professional, and if she would get an idea, there would be no thought of throwing something out there like surprising everybody. She would discuss it with the writer, she would discuss it with the director, and say, I have an idea, do you think this would work? And if everybody agreed that it would work within the context of the show, it'd be used, because a lot of good things happen right on the set when something becomes apparent because of the props, the situation, or whatever. But some of the things were improvised on the set, but improvisation within the context of the show, not startling anybody or not anything out of context. It was not hit him over the head comedy. It was the situation of a woman trying to hold everything together for herself and for her family. And so we're talking about the transitional period when women were the passive, reflective mommies at home to the women who had occupations. And Doris was one of the first people who had an occupation on television. She was a secretary. She was a secretary for McLain, and then she was a secretary for John Dehner. And then in television there was the Marlo Thomas, who was also not looking for work, but she, being a freelance actress, Marlo Thomas would find work occasionally. And then Mary Tyler Moore, who had a full-time job at the television station. But historically, I guess we can put the Doris Day Show, as far as women are concerned, as the beginning of women with an occupation, women who were forced to have a job to make ends meet. Brave single mothers taking care of the little boys, little families, and that was part of the fun, part of the adventure. Doris seemed to be a very sincere worker as a secretary, and it would always be her bosses who would be making problems. She would be sort of sailing through with her adventures. She was not the kind of a clown as Lucy was a clown, and I think she was very gentle in her suggestions, where Lucy was more like a boss. Do this, do that. So this was a very exciting time for women, and I see, as I'm looking back, I was a regular on Bewitched, which was even going back further, where although Elizabeth had her magic powers, she was still a housewife without a job, and she was reflective of her husband, although she was very persuasive with her ploys, being the witch, to persuade him to do what she wanted him to do, and also with her mother, Agnes Moorehead. But and in Marlowe's case, being a regular on the, I'm thinking now, I was a regular on a lot of women's shows. How lucky for me. And I was just thinking of Barbara Feldon on Get Smart. She was very much of the reflective sister, mommy kind of image, although she was very attractive. With Don Adams, I would say that Doris was a supportive, nurturing mother and friend, and an optimist. It was a great privilege to work with these ladies, Elizabeth Montgomery, Doris Day, Marlo Thomas. The evolution of women in television. How do they do it? Doris's comedic ability was outstanding in the sense that she always got across the feeling of optimism, always got her feeling of optimism, her feeling of everything is going to be okay, positivity, always shone through her work. that everything, no matter what happened, that everything would be okay. Everything would come out fine, everything would be positive, everything would be a plus. And if there were some challenges, you'd meet the challenges and still come out, you'd come out learning something and you'd come out better for it. So it was, she always had that emanation of positivity, and she still does. I haven't seen her in quite a while, but she has a dog-friendly, a pet-friendly hotel up in Carmel that we keep thinking about going up to. We haven't had a chance to yet. So we're so busy with these little guys. Adam is 7 and Josh is 2. But we will get up there and maybe bring our dogs and see all the doggies up there. I'm thrilled to have been a part of the Doris Day Show. It's the history of television, and a specific of a gentler time, a kinder time, a sweeter time, a less obscene time, a more cordial, friendly time. Today you've got a lot of anger out there. I mean, even Everybody Loves Raymond, which is a brilliant show. There's a lot of yelling going on. There wasn't a lot of yelling on the Doris Day Show. So things progress. Things don't necessarily progress in the most positive way, but things do change. You know, like as the French say, the only constant in life is change. So I was thrilled to be a part of it. Doris Day, I love you madly. I will always love you and always be grateful for our time together.